when you never spoke before. I can taste your fear. It's burning on my lips. You're the poison in my veins. The addiction I can't fix. Dry your eyes and save your lives. Not this time. You're still so cold, too close to home. Running tired from the fire. I want to embrace yourself. Took your place inside the fire, and you went for your life. You're a sucker for attention, and you're addicted to the pain. And you blame it on the past. Did you think that this would last? On and on and on again. Oh, here we go again with the mood swings. Happy birthday, love, but you were moving, so I didn't have to just assume things. Oh, read your mind, you're doing fine. Can't do this time after time. Keep holding on, keep singing the same old song, but it's too late, I'm already gone. Say it's too late, I'm already gone. You're still so cold, too close to home. Running tired from the fire. I want to embrace yourself. Took your place inside the fire, like a wolf in disguise. Run for your life, run for your life. She's a wolf in disguise. Run for your life, run for your life. She's a wolf in disguise. Yeah. Forget what you heard, don't get caught in her lies. She's a wolf in disguise. Your skin so cold, too close to home. Running tired, running tired. Your skin so cold, too close to home. Running tired from the fire. And you embrace yourself. Took your place inside the fire. Running tired from the fire. And you ran from your life. Open your eyes, open your eyes. She's a wolf in disguise.
Nobody ever tells me anything that it's now maybe soulless, maybe heartless in Sioux Falls. Good evening. It's a Friday football feast, and welcome to NETMA. I'm your host, Tyler Falk. Kendra Hall will join me shortly, but thanks for joining us on another Friday. What a spectacular weekend of SFL action in the wild card round and a couple of good games last night in the minor leagues in week 2. We had 2 weeks of minor league action to catch up on, and of course we got the wild card round past weekend and the quarterfinals this weekend that we're going to talk about. We got a lot to talk about here tonight, even though there only was technically 12 games this past week. Still a lot to talk about, especially with minor league and major league both in action. So good to see everybody. We'll get to everybody else in a second, but let's reintroduce our co-host. Miss Kendra Hall joins us. Good to see you again, Kendra. You're back after last week of being on a little bit of a grocery run.
Yes, most definitely. Yeah, I was out and about trying to get our grocery stuff done and get all of our just errands done. With the following week before that, I was with my parents doing some fall stuff because my mom's favorite holiday is fall. So.
Let's go ahead and meet everybody else. Let's jump to the chat real quick. We got Lottie Lou made a couple of touchdown grabs last night as the Rustlers fell to Tacoma. Nate Hall joins us. Travis Arthur says hello. Justin Reside is here. Rhett Sawyer says good evening. Let's see who else. Kendra Hall also piping into chat, pulling double duty as well, Kendra. Mr. Andy Hamilton says hello. Nice comeback victory from the Legion this past weekend, as they took down the St. Louis Gladiators. Let's see. Bullet Poletsky, Charlie. Bullet Poletsky jumps in, says hello. Zach Holdorf. And that's the roster for now. That has actually popped in to say hello live. I know it's a little early for those of you on the West Coast. Hopefully you guys check it out later. But we did mention at the top of the show that nobody ever tells me anything, that it is Soulless in Sioux Falls. The big news, as announced on Ashley Jackson's SFL Nights with AJ Stryker, Collin Hart is out in Sioux Falls. He has decided to test free agency. That's the biggest news I think anyone expected. I don't think anyone expected the backbone of that offense for the last several seasons to say, you know what, it's not working here. I want to go test waters elsewhere and to play somewhere else next season. He doesn't want to come back for another season in South Dakota. He wants to go somewhere else. And I say Soulless in Sioux Falls because Sioux Falls has always been a running team, and they built around Collin Hart and his explosiveness in seasons 14 and 15. When the game changed in season 16, when the league went to a difficulty setting, they went from, I believe it was veteran to all pro. That's the system in 2K8. But when they went to the most difficult setting for the AI, the most competitive setting in the AI, it had an effect on the running game. Plays that worked to perfection, that were guaranteed plays to go have to break off 60, 70-yard runs week in, week out, no longer worked at that clip. They had to change, and Sioux Falls was one of the last teams to change up their philosophy. We saw it as we ended out this past season, where Sioux Falls started to make a couple changes, and they started winning football games. They started playing like the old Sioux Falls with a new flair. Collin Hart says, I want my own style of football to be played. I want to be able to run roughshod over defenses, but I don't want to do it with Sioux Falls. I want to take a different route. Kendra, for one of the stalwarts in Sioux Falls, to be the first man to come out of that locker room in a long time and say, you know, I want to go play somewhere else. That's huge. That's major news here in the SFL.
Absolutely. I don't think any of us was prepared to even imagine that we would be talking about this. I am shocked that someone has left their locker room, to be honest. But like I said, I don't think any of us would have prepared for this announcement that he would have left.
And Jose Fuentes makes a good point. It's the biggest news since Jose Fuentes left the Sparrows last season. And it's more of what made them dominant. Like Jose Fuentes was alongside Nick Fargo and company. Nick Fargo's still there in Sioux Falls. But he was in the defensive backfield with Nick Fargo for the longest time and was really a stalwart on that defense. He left last season. That defense struggled over the course of the middle part of the season to be competitive in some games. And now that they've lost this huge part on offense, and with not many running backs in the league, you know, at this point so far in the offseason for some teams, they're deciding, you know what, I'm content with where I'm playing, and maybe Atlanta, if I'm playing in Portland, Ezekiel Love, he's not going anywhere. Robert Redford, unless you have some insider information, Kendra, that I don't think will come out of it. I don't think Robert Redford is moving. There aren't going to be a lot of veteran running backs moving around. So it's going to be a different look for Sioux Falls. Are they going to cook up a more passing strategy and try and get Julian Tyree to throw the football around? That's my biggest question. What is the game plan for Sioux Falls? Kendra, your thought. Are they going more passing, or are they going to take someone maybe like Doug Brown of the minors? There's, again, very few spots in the majors right now at this point in time for a minor league running back to come in. We know about Douglas Brown. We know about, especially last week when Annapolis played, they were on their bye week here in week 2, but we know about Randy Squarebush now. There's a lot of competition for this one spot, maybe in Sioux Falls.
I think if I could project what they might do, they more than likely will probably pull from the minors. I think it's the best play that you could do because you can mold that player into who you would like them to be for your team. You can help them progress from the bottom up. So I feel like it would be the best option for them to find someone within the minor league. But any advice we could give is everyone that's in the minor league that is a running back, you've got to get your name out there because that's one spot out of all the running backs we have in the minor leagues. So most definitely, you've got to shine the way that you can shine to be noticed for one spot. Not saying there might not be any other spots later, but I mean, for a good team like Sioux Falls to lose their own and then only one spot to offer, it's kind of tough for the individuals who are in the minor league at this point.
Another big thing too is you have Collin Hart for the longest time at the clip he's running, at the contract you gave him, at a very nice clip for Collin Hart. Now you have to take a minor. You're probably looking at a minor leaguer unless someone like T. Roy Gaines decides, I'm going to fly the coop here in Baltimore, get back into a running back role and get over to Sioux Falls and be the star running back over there. That's more than likely not going to happen here in this offseason. And so you're going from, even in the minor leagues, even with how developed Randy Squarebush or Douglas Brown or maybe even GP Wells from the River Runners, you're going from someone that's maybe a middle of the pack running back from a guy that was one of the best running backs this league has seen in Collin Hart. It's going to be a big jump for Sioux Falls. They aren't going to have, if they rely on the running game to get them places in the season 18 with a rookie running back. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm saying it's going to be very tough, and they're going to need the offensive line, the fullback ahead of them, which is Cornelius. And they're also going to need a couple of tight ends to step up and help block because they're going to need all the help they can get if they rely on that running game.
Most definitely, I agree.
All right. What are your guys' thoughts there in chat? What does Sioux Falls do if you were in their shoes? Let us know in the comments. Link to the Discord is down there in the description. Go ahead and join the conversation either via the chat here on YouTube or join us over on our Discord server, link to which is down below. And if you haven't checked out the SFL website, link to that is also down below in the description as well. So go please check out the SFL website where you can find more podcasts like this one, like SFL Nights with AJ Stryker. We've got Access Live that's re-kicked off again. Good to see Dave Access back on the airwaves. We've got a whole bunch of other great podcasts like Coach's Corner. We've got SFL Fights and Insights with Axel Raven. A lot of great shows out there. Please go check out and give them all the love and support you guys are giving us here tonight and everybody else as well. All right, so let's get into the past weekend of football with the Major League. Let's get into the wild card round. We had, I think, if I remember correctly from my predictions last week, I went perfect. I went perfect 4-0. Every single upset I picked, I think, went the way that it was going to go. And I think I was more surprised that my predictions were correct more than I think a couple other teams. Like, we knew that Queen City, had struggled over the past 6 games, winning only 2 of the past 6. We knew that Las Vegas was a pretty stingy team, and they were coming in hot after a couple of solid wins. London, to me, was hit or miss, and I was kind of impressed with how they weren't able to score as many points against Arizona. Eddie Gage and company really put that team to sleep while they had the starters out. The score line's a lot more vaunted than it was because the backups came in for the starting defense, and everything went downhill as far as the defensive game plan because of the vaunted power and the correct game planning that Eddie Gage and company did over there in Arizona. So before we get to the new power rankings, we got a couple comments in here based on Sioux Falls and a couple others. Daniel Wright takes one of the 4 horsemen in the minors. Let's see. Andy Hamilton, which teams will have interest in Collin Hart too? I have a thought, but wonder what chat thinks. Again, the only other opening that I see at the moment is my team, or I should say Mike Ryan's team, is Louisiana Revolution, of course, with Reggie Sheedy retiring. That's the one spot that may have a landing spot for Collin Hart. Again, I don't know what I haven't heard, haven't seen any comments, any announcements that we have any other running backs retiring, any other running backs, changing up hometown locations. But it's going to be a really tight fit for those running backs, and maybe we'll get a couple of moves, but I really don't think so. Andy Hamilton has an idea. Let's see. Bullet Boletsky says Sioux Falls will grab one of the powered up running backs from the minors. Justin Recites his rookie draft in December. Maybe got 4 good ones. Teflon Ron Yates says interesting. Good to see everybody has jumped in here late on in the show as well. Teflon Ron, Justin. Let's see. Jose Fuentes jumped in late, and thanks everybody for jumping on and saying hi. It's always good to hear from you guys. All right. I think that's all the comments up to this point. So let's check out the updated power rankings for the wild card weekend, and it starts with the London Knights. Now, I had a chance to watch each and every single game, and I think the team that came out of the gate very flat were the London Knights. They weren't able to put up any points against the starters at all in the course of that football game. And London looked like they were struggling to get going. Pickler threw a few interceptions, was not comfortable in the pocket. The Scorpions defense got home. It was only when the defense for Arizona came off the field that London was able to start moving down the field with Pickler and company. But it really wasn't a strong performance from London's offense. And I think that's what ended up for their loss. Kendra, the Knights, they have improved. They made it to the playoffs for their first time in franchise history. I think they really had a shock to the system when they played Arizona, where they weren't able to find any traction. And I think they now know and will come back stronger in season 18 with a more composed game plan, a more redefined and refined game plan coming into season 18.
Absolutely. I think they started out, like I said, they've worked their butts off to get into the playoffs. And I think with them, how they played this week, they ultimately just should be proud that they have made it and was able to show everyone that they could.
Absolutely. All right. A couple other comments from Andy Hamilton says technically all teams are open, but I'm sure there are teams who would have interest in a guy like Hart. Now that begs the question, are there GMs and owners out there that are going to say to their already established running back in that camp saying, Collin Hart's available, he's better than you, you have to go find a new home. I think that'd be rather harsh, especially in the culture of this league, to say to Collin Hart or say to their already established running back to say, or let's just take Teflon Ron Yates' comment out there. Let's take Andy Hamilton's point. Let's say, you know what, Robert Redford, we like Collin Hart. He fits our play style better. Hit the road, Jack. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Robert Redford has a solid spot up there in Vancouver, but we never know. Pissed off Andy Hamilton. He played solidly in the wild card round. If he maybe decides to make his bed in the quarterfinal round, maybe that's the last straw for Andy Hamilton. I don't see that happening, frankly. But again, SFL is full of crazy things that could possibly happen. We could see, I think the team that may end up doing probably the best, my odds for a team like that, to go off and do something like that would probably be, I want to say Carolina comes to mind, but I don't think that'd be a good fit for Collin Hart, because I think Collin Hart loves to run the football. Being involved in a swing passing game might not fit his style, but we'll see. And of course, Andy Hamilton confirms like he's in the playoffs. I'm good. I don't think I'll get rid of Robert Redford. But London at 12 have a better thought of what playoff football is like after this season. Again, congratulations to them. First time in the playoffs. Now they have a taste. Hopefully next season they're able to put together another strong performance to get them back into the playoffs. All right. Moving on to number 11 is Queen City. And Queen City had a terrible back half of the season. We've talked about that for a while now. Again, just wasn't the same team against Las Vegas. Las Vegas was a stingy team. We talked about it last week, where Las Vegas is going to be that, electrifying offense compared to Queen City's blue collar work. And the blue collar worker got hit hard by the punk on the corner of the street. And he got his suit messed up a little bit. So Queen City just didn't have enough. It was good to see them back in the playoffs. It's good to see the most successful franchise in terms of championship wins get back in the playoffs with the new core at their front office. They're in a solid place. They now have, I think, the tools to make another run back at the playoffs to try and get back in there for season 18. We'll see what happens. It was a good surprise story, good feel-good story for the season. Las Vegas trying to make themselves be the feel-good story now with taking down Queen City. Kendra, Queen City down here at 11, out of the playoffs. It's good to see him back in. Your thoughts on the Corsairs?
So absolutely. I think seeing them at least on the board was important. And they showed everyone that they could hold a good game. But I mean, it's sad to see them so low on the power ranking, but I mean, we always have to have the low and the high. So, but most definitely moving on to Los Angeles, number 10.
Number 10 for Los Angeles, the Lycans. They stay right here at 10 since they took the loss. They had the lead going into the second half. A couple of these battles with London and Queen City, those two teams were blown out for the most part. Los Angeles put a good fight to Charleston, but Charleston eventually pulled away with a 20-0 run in the second half. But for the Lycans, I said it last week. They are very inconsistent on offense. One week they look like they're hanging in there, doing okay. The other half of the time they're struggling to move their offense. Their defense kept them in most of those games, but their offense to me is probably the most inconsistent of the bunch that was in the playoffs. I still think Fort Worth was a little inconsistent. Sorry, Hacker, but Los Angeles with the teams in the playoffs, probably the most inconsistent team coming in. But Kendra, Lycans made it into the playoffs once again. Just need to work on the consistency going into season 18.
I agree. Yeah, I agree that they should have just stayed at number 10. So we'll move on to St. Louis, number 9.
St. Louis with the best performance out of the teams that took the loss and took an early exit from the playoffs. The Gladiators putting up 31 points on Vancouver. And I think St. Louis showed Vancouver that they're not a team to be trifled with. They took down Vancouver in the regular season and nearly took them down here in the playoffs. They showed that Vancouver's weakness is that defense, and they like to play. If they're not going to stop you, they're going to try and go for the pick. It's either hell or high water for that Vancouver defense to try and get stops. And St. Louis did enough to get 31 points up on the board, but it was their defense for St. Louis that ended up costing them the football game against a very high-powered Vancouver offense that, on any given sim day, Vancouver will get the victory, and they proved it. They took a 38-31 victory over the Gladiators, but the Gladiators being the team from 500, I mean, over the past 4 seasons, they're now just under 500. I was looking for them to be the inverse of the same team and take down Vancouver. That way they could be a perfect 500 football team over the past 4 seasons. But 500, the football team goes out of the playoffs early, Kendra.
Absolutely. I think that game, I'm going to be honest, was very gut-wrenching. That was very hard to watch because they did play a tough game. They literally ran us for our money. So I give them so much kudos, and we supported each other in chat, but that was ultimately a good game. Next one is Las Vegas number 8.
First of the victors, the Las Vegas Fury, and they move up a couple spots into number 8 this week. What's more to say about Las Vegas? Las Vegas are one of the more stingiest teams in these playoffs. They will come from behind. They will start out in front. They will lock you down, shut you down, and pull out the victory. That's exactly what they did to Los Angeles. They took advantage of how Los Angeles was stumbling into the playoffs, and they continue to use that momentum to push them into the quarterfinals. It was an excellent day all around for the Las Vegas Fury. We'll see what happens going into the quarterfinals. They have a very tough matchup coming up, but we'll see what happens. Kendra, your thoughts on the stingy Las Vegas Fury?
I mean, I agree that they're stingy. They moved up 3 spots this week, and I was highly impressed. I will be excited to see what they have in store. So we'll move on to Charleston, number 7.
Before we do that, I do want to make a clarification. I misspoke on their opponent from the previous week. They took down Queen City, not LA. My apologies. Again, still a very nice performance for the Fury. Did have a better third down conversion percentage than I thought they did. They didn't have the ball a whole lot, but they did force a couple of errors out of the Queen City quarterback, AJ Caswell. So that's always a good thing to do. And one thing that I said last week that needed to have happened was Green had to limit his turnovers. Only had 1 and had 3 touchdowns. So a very solid performance from the rookie quarterback, Joseph Green. He'll need to be just as consistent when his club goes up against the number 1 seed Baltimore Vultures. All right, now on to number 7, Kendra. That's the Charleston Predators. The Predators, very solid performance for the Preds. They had that 20 to nothing run there in the second half. What impressed me the most is that momentum they took from the Week 12 game and then translated that into having a solid second half performance. That's the kind of team that Charleston can be. And we saw that when they played a week ago, or I should say a week ago in Week 12, when they took on the Jacksonville Kings. Now, the real question coming into that football game against the LA Lycans was, now going up against a better team, are the Predators for real? Are they going to take it to the LA Lycans? Now, it looked like a very tight ball game going into the half, and then all of a sudden, here come the Predators. Their offense showed up, shut them out in the second half, and completely took control of that football game. This game was I thought it was going to be the cleanest game of all, but Richardson had 5 interceptions compared to Drew's 2. That's a very common theme here in the middle 2 games, is there were 7 interceptions in both games between the 2 quarterbacks. But it really came down to who threw the less mistakes, and that came down to TD Drew. Not the most impressive performance out of a quarterback, but when your defense is setting you up in pretty good field position, you don't really need to put up that many numbers. But good job for the Predators. They come up to number 7, and they have a date with the Florida Storm at the Eye. All right, Kendra, what do we got for number 6?
Vancouver.
Now, Vancouver moved down a spot. Kendra was not happy with me. I'm sure Andy will not be happy. We'll get pissed off Andy Hamilton in the chat here in just a moment. But here is why I moved him down. It's because of who we've got number 5. It's because of the quality of Vancouver's defense. They were very leaky against St. Louis. They're a very leaky defense, all told, in comparison to a lot of teams. Let's just take a quick look at their defense here real quick. For Vancouver, their defense is not even in the top 10 as far as majority of their stats. They are 16th best when it comes to points per game, which is 27. They are 18th best in the league. This is amongst all teams, not just playoff teams, but they allow on average close to 300 yards passing through the air, over 100 yards a day on the ground. They in total are the 15th best team when it comes to total yards a game, which is 10 yards below 400. They are giving up the yards. The one thing they have going for them, and the one thing that I've mentioned that they have going for them, is they play hell or high water defense. They will turn over that football. They are the 6th best team in takeaways with 34 on the season. They will let you march down the field, but they'll take it away in clutch areas. They're going to need to do that when they play Mexico City. And we know that the quarterback over there for the Aztecs can throw some ducks sometimes. So we'll see if they get the duck throwing Matt Wilson or the spiral throwing Matt Wilson. But Vancouver down a spot. Kendra, defend your club.
I just have to let everyone know I am disappointed in you, Tyler. And I believe Buck is disappointed in you too.
He does knock over my drinks every once in a while, so.
He does, because he knew you were going to move my team down a spot. I mean, I agree that that game last week was tough for us. However, I don't feel like we were leaky, though. So I wouldn't have used those terms of leaky. But, I mean, I get it. Every team plays, but offense, I believe, is a really good offense. So at the end of the day, our next game, and I mean, it's not just because I won there, but I believe next game I believe we go up against Arizona will be tough, but we'll see who is standing at the very end.
And Andy Hamilton does like to point out how many wins he's got in that column. He's got 8 wins on the regular season. Make that number 9 with the playoff victory. Your team as a whole, it's more led by your offense, Mr. Hamilton. That's how I see it. Conversely, the team at number 5, Kendra,
Team number 5 of Arizona
has a much better defense than Andy Hamilton's. The Arizona Scorpions defense pitched a shutout against London in one of the most dominant defensive performances you will see in the new age of the SFL. The Scorpions, before they took off their starters to give them a rest and to make sure they didn't get injured, just completely played lights out football. They shut out London spectacularly, taking the ball away multiple times during their victory. That being 6 all told, including a hat trick from Bernard Smith, the 4th. And a couple other picks from Tropicana, Gamble, and Garrison. Their defense is no joke. And if we're going to take a look at a much more defensive effort, this team is definitely a top 10 defense. 4th in points allowed per game, 21.4. 5th best team in terms of passing yards allowed, 252. 4th best team in rushing with 72 yards average allowed. 3rd best team in total yards allowed, 339. They are the best team when it comes to allowing rushing touchdowns. They are 9th in both first downs against and third downs against at 216 and 50% respectively. They take away the ball a whole lot, just like Hammy Hamilton's team. They have 4 less takeaways than Mr. Hamilton, but their take give is much better than Vancouver. But Hamilton's Legion has a 1 in the take give. Conversely, I'm reading Atlanta stats. Let's go back to that. That's Atlanta stats. My apologies. Scorpions still in the top 10 in a lot of stats. Points per game, they actually the best team in points per game with 19.3. Passing yards allowed, they're 14th, 284. Rushing yards against, 79 yards. Again, really solid defense is probably the best way to go about it. Where Atlanta has the better rushing defense, Arizona's pass defense is no joke. 3rd best in rushing or passing touchdowns allowed with 17. 1st in third downs allowed with 43%. Solid defense all around. I think that Arizona's defense, in summary, is a much better one than Vancouver. That is why I moved them above Vancouver, because I think in these playoffs, with a complete game plan from Arizona, with the defensive performance they showed last week, it'll be the explosive offense of Vancouver going up against the dominant defense of Arizona, and then you have the weaker sides of the opposing teams going up against each other, the offense of Arizona compared to the defense of Vancouver. I think in that scenario, Arizona comes out with the victory. So Kendra, any thoughts on Arizona before we go to the top 4 and take a look more in depth of the quarterfinal matchups?
So I will do a mix up. So Vancouver sees Mexico City this week, not Arizona. So that was my bad. So number 4 is actually Mexico City.
Mexico City Aztecs is the team there that is playing the Vancouver Legion, and Dwayne Schiller makes a very good point. 7 of the points were on a pick 6, and 7 was on a deep shot play action. They picked us off 5 times. Don't really think they were nearly as leaky as many defenses in the playoffs. And you have a point there, Dwayne. You have a point that the defense was not as leaky as you would thought. I still think Vancouver has one of the weaker defenses in this playoff. That's just my opinion. Let's go and get to Mexico City. So the Aztecs, they're playing Vancouver this week. Of course, none of the top 4 are staying, so we're using this as an opportunity to take a look at the matchups for the quarterfinals. For the matchup between the Legion and the Aztecs, this one will be a really tight contest. You have the Aztecs, who are a solid ball club all around, and you have Vancouver, whose offense plays lights out for a good part of the game. The one problem I see is Matt Wilson, does not throw the ball away as much as he did in the past couple seasons. He's only thrown the ball away a total of that's 2 weeks ago. Sorry. 22 times, which makes him the 6th best quarterback in terms of interceptions. He does have the same number of touchdowns compared to those interceptions, so 22 apiece. What really needs to happen now is, can Vancouver get to Matt Wilson, or is the Aztecs with a much more balanced game plan going to take it to Vancouver? I did like, however, Vancouver's more balanced approach. Tom Pepper over 300 yards, Robert Redford into the 100s as well as far as rushing. So it was a solid performance from Vancouver's offense. That gives, however, Mexico City one extra week of game plan and film to try and stop the Legion, which I think will be the difference when Vancouver play Mexico City. We'll get to official pick'ems later, but Kendra, your thoughts on Mexico City versus Vancouver? Kendra, you are muted, ma'am.
Here we go. Sorry. It was muted because Nate had to come downstairs and check our front door because my Ring doorbell kept picking up someone in our driveway. So I needed him to go check that out. So Mexico City, I feel like we're going to be ready for Mexico City this week. I think we're going to come as strong as we can, and we will see who stands. But I really have as much. What am I trying to say? Sorry. I believe we have what we need to beat them, so we will see. So number 3 is Atlanta.
Number 3 going to the Atlanta Swarm, and this is the team we were talking about that'll be playing the Arizona Scorpions in the quarterfinal round. And these Atlanta Swarm, we know how good BDG Hollywood is. We know how good of a quarterback that Bryant Dynasty has developed into. Now here's the question. Can that defense hold firm like they have for the most of the season? 9 victories all told, only 3 minor losses, 1 to the Revolution in week 9, 1 to Queen City week 4 when Queen City were still going undefeated, and 1 to start off the season against London, and that was a pretty big shock. But they come in on a winning streak of 3 in a row, taking down Tulsa, Portland, and St. Louis. So teams that at one point or another were close to 500 or under 500 if you're Tulsa. So as far as a tune-up goes, they've got a couple tune-up games under their belt. However, now they face a very tough opponent. The only team on their schedule that finished the season above 500 was Queen City. That they lost them. That was all the way back in week 4. Now we're going to see what type of Atlanta team comes out. Are we going to see that dominant team, or are we going to see the Arizona Scorpions continue the momentum with a very impressive win to make it 2 in a row and get to the semifinals? Andy Hamiltonson, please talk about Mexico City a little more during the matchup talk, a lot of how they match up with Vancouver. But Phoenix Jones, Dags, and co deserve their own talk. Ramos is doing amazing this year. Completely agree. We'll get to that before we do pick'ems as well, Mr. Hamilton. we've got a little bit extra time here on this Friday football feast because the aforementioned Arizona Scorpions, their head coach over there and owner, Eddie Gage, is still working on a couple of game planning things. So no say it with your chest with Eddie Gage tonight. So we have a little bit extra time to run over if we need to. But thanks everybody for sticking around. Lone Star Glory, aka Charles Dougherty, jumps in saying hello. Dwayne Schindler, of course, had jumped in saying hello. Let's see. I think we're up to date on everybody else who has jumped into the chat. Hacker, of course. Can't forget Stephen Hacker, who jumped in as well. I think that's all caught up to everyone who's jumped into chat. So thanks for everybody for coming in saying hello. But Kendra, this Atlanta Swarm. We talked about their offense. Do you see anyone on their defense that comes up and makes a play? We've got Chris Porter, BRV, Billy Ray Valentine, Aquana Shine always can make plays. Jay Rock, who has come alive in, I believe this is season 2 for Jay Rock, if I remember correctly. No, season number 1. He's in talk to being maybe rookie of the year with a couple people. But who makes the play? Who makes the play for this Atlanta Swarm to keep them interested?
I think their offense will keep everything interesting. I keep them close to my heart. That is where I first started my SFL career. So I feel like they have nothing to worry about. I have all the faith in them. So we will see. I believe they go up against Arizona this week. So we will see who battles it out. But number 2 is Florida.
Number 2, the Florida Storm. I've been saying it. I've used this moniker for him a couple times. The Florida Storm. Consistency, thy name is Florida Storm. And they're, I think, on their way to a championship berth if their wrench doesn't get thrown into their plan. Very solid season. They finish out with a 10-2 record. Only losses this week were early on the season to Fort Worth in week 4 and Arizona week 1. And so, what needs to happen here, if you're the Florida Storm, is keep the consistency, keep that balanced game plan. Maybe throw a couple different plays into the spanner to throw Charleston off their game. But right now, Ron Cochran doesn't have to throw the ball a lot with the production he's getting out of Charlie Boletsky. Furthermore, for Florida, we've got, Stephen Bush, EJ Minton, Justice Blackwell, Varden Zarkov, Paulie Truth, all making plays. 2 weeks ago when they had that little tune-up game against Carolina, 2 touchdowns for Zarkov, which was a pretty nice thing to see. 6 interceptions as well. So this team can make things happen, especially against Charleston, who, again, are riding high on the momentum. Will we see the momentum that carried over from the wild card round? Will that carry over into the quarterfinals? Kendra, we'll do pick'ems here in a little bit, but what is going on with Charleston? How are they going to match up with Florida?
I mean, I think Charleston needs to stay strong with their defense and prevent Florida from pushing. Because if you let Florida out, then you're pretty much, there goes the game. So I believe they have a good chance. I think Charleston just needs to hold their offense the whole time during that game.
Best thing for Charleston going for their defense is their top 5 in points allowed, passing yards allowed, passing touchdowns allowed. Very solid defense in that front. Where they could get maybe burned a little bit is the rushing game from Florida. If Boletsky is able to run roughshod over the Charleston defense, they're going to have a little bit of a problem. They're only the 16th best defense when it comes to that category, and only the 15th best defense when it comes to rushing touchdowns. So they can be kind of leaky in the front 7 when it comes to the rushing attack, and they've got a good back they're going to go up against this weekend. So Kendra, of course, it's no surprise who we got at number 1. Let's let everybody know who's back up there at number 1.
Number 1 will be Baltimore.
The Vultures. Not the Vultures anymore, the Vultures, because apparently they got a wee ball moniker going around here somewhere. But they're going up against the Las Vegas Fury. The Baltimore Vultures have only lost once to Las Vegas. And that was the first time they ever played back in season 12, where the Fury pulled out a 1-point victory back only in week 2 of season 12. 6 seasons gone. A total of 3 years have passed since that game. Last season, the Fury, or I should say this season. I'm already thinking we're in season 18. It's 5 seasons since. 2.5 seasons since. 2.5 years since season 12. But earlier, in the rain, Las Vegas weren't able to score a single point in that matchup to Baltimore, and they completely dismantled the Fury back in week 5 of this season. Now, on maybe a better weather day, a better chance for the Fury to maybe make something happen. We'll see what happens. Baltimore, of course, their perfect season was denied by London in week 12. Meanwhile, Las Vegas coming in with a 3-game winning streak, beating Lone Star, Arizona, and Queen City just this past week to make the quarterfinal dance. This Las Vegas team has showed me, at least, that they can contend with these big boys and provide a couple of surprises. The big thing is now, can Joseph Green be consistent? Can he keep his mistakes to a minimum again against Jack Whitmore, who last week was very uncharacteristic? And people have been saying last couple of weeks he's been uncharacteristic and throwing the ball away a couple of times. Had 5 interceptions in week 12. The offense wasn't able to get going on the ground. Jimmy Hazard and T-Roy Gaines combined for a total of 71 yards. And that was pretty much it for the ground attack. The air attack was still pretty good. 319 yards in total passing from Jack Whitmore, but it wasn't enough to overcome London. Las Vegas and London are about the same team. I think Las Vegas's defense is maybe a little bit better put together than London in some aspects. In other aspects, London's ball club has a little bit better in that category. But we're going to have to see. We'll go to pick'ems here in a little bit. But Kendra, Baltimore, they don't have an easy opponent. They're playing against the quote unquote 11th seed. But this isn't going to be a game to sniff at either.
No, I think both teams are coming strong, so I don't think Baltimore's best way to approach this is be very light and not keep their game on. So I think this game would be, honestly, out of all the games, I think this is going to be the game that we need to watch.
All right, and that's your power rankings here for the wild card round. Let's go ahead and do our rundown as we usually do here on NETMA. Starting from the bottom, going to the top: London, Queen City, LA, St. Louis, Las Vegas, Charleston, Vancouver, Arizona, Mexico City, Atlanta, Florida, and Baltimore. And that is your wild card power ranking rundown, as we will move on to questions provided of the Show Questions channel. That schedules, my apologies, provided by the Show Questions channel in the NETMA server Discord, link to which is in the description of this video. Go ahead and check us out and give us a like and a follow here and a subscribe maybe, and hit that notification bell here on YouTube to get all the updates here when the next show pops out. And you can always get first-hand information from the NETMA server Discord before we get invites out here on YouTube. All right, so first question comes from Nate Hall. The first glaring question is, where is Tyler and why didn't I post the show question start here? Is Kendra taking over NETMA? Kendra, are you taking over NETMA?
Tyler, please don't take this personally. This is when we get hate mail because people are just jealous of us. So I would just keep going over this question because he's just one of those hate mail kind of people. He's just jealous, and that's why he just skip over that one.
I think you also put in the YouTube chat that the better Hall is on screen, and I think that he could probably see that. I think that's the better assumption there. All right, moving on to Guy Clausen. Will the top 4 seeds make quick work of their quarterfinal matchup? No, not by a long shot. It's going to be a tough matchup for each and every team. Las Vegas, even though they were shut out last time they played Baltimore, they're a different team coming here into the quarterfinal matchup. That game's going to be tight. I think it probably will get a little bit lopsided late on in that football game as players start to get tired. But I think to start off the football game, Las Vegas is going to take it to Baltimore. They may or may not come out with the victory. That's for pick'ems later tonight. But it will not be an easy matchup for either of these ball clubs.
No, I think with everyone that's currently in the playoffs right now has played so hard to get there. So I don't honestly think it will be easy. I really don't.
All right. As Andy Hamilton jumps into the server, welcome Andy Hamilton to the NETMA Discord server. We move on to Justin Reside's question is, does Vegas have a chance versus Baltimore, or will it be too much Baltimore air attack? Now, the air attack for Baltimore was pretty stifled pretty well against London. Does Las Vegas, decide, we're going to use some of that game plan to maybe hinder Baltimore's attack? And I mean, if London can do it, I'm pretty sure Las Vegas might have a shot. Again, it's going to be a tight ball game early. Baltimore, in my opinion, will probably pull out the victory late on in that game, but it's certainly not going to be easy to start off that football game. Kendra, your thoughts on Vegas and Baltimore? We talked about it a little earlier. Any further thoughts here on LV and Ball?
No, I think we covered it pretty good.
All right, moving on then to Charles Doherty's question is, will Tyler's cat, Buck, attack him on the air tonight and spill his beverage? Well, the one thing I can say for the safety of my beverage is it has remained upright tonight. And I will say that over on Dave Axe's show, Axe's Live, I made an appearance over there, back in my old spot, or in the unforgettable circle. I am not blaming Buck. I am blaming my uncoordination skills. On Tuesday night, I knocked over my drink of choice multiple times, and my keyboard is still feeling the effects. Occasionally, I have a repeating W or repeating U because of that every once in a while. But long story short, Buck, he doesn't like noise. Like he gets. I live near Air Force Base. We got planes flying over all the time, at all times the day. So what really happens is when there's loud things going on, when I'm on my calls and commentary, when I'm, on the air doing NETMA or doing Access Live or on any guest appearance, he doesn't like that. He goes off and, his favorite spot is underneath my bed, where he just takes a nice little, cat nap under there sometimes, but he doesn't like loud noises. And as soon as I'm done, he knows. He comes out and he says hello, and we're all buddy once again. But he doesn't like loud noises, Kendra.
Yeah, don't be blaming my cat there, Tyler.
I'm not blaming him. I never have blamed him. I have never blamed my Buck.
I'm just saying, do not blame my poor Buck. He needs my love.
All right, moving on to Eddie Gage's. What addition is being made to the west wing of Charles Doherty's home? There's a large black cover blocking the view of cameras trying to get a sneak peek from helicopters above. Well, Charles Doherty, what are you putting up over there at your house? What kind of renovations are you making over there? I don't know. It could be a statue to himself, as a few people have mentioned. Nate Hall thinks it's glorious. Again, water features possibly, but yeah. Things are going on, and it's become a fond exhibit already in the Show Questions channel. If you want to take a look at the picture, you can go ahead into the Show Questions channel and check that out for yourself. But do you care to speculate, Kendra, on what edition Mr. Doherty is leaving in his yard?
No, I mean, I think Mike had just nailed it right on the coffin about the photo. I just read his comment. If you scroll down a little bit, it describes what the photo is. So I just saw that, so I was like, okay. So yeah, if you want to see definitely the show questions, I will take blame for it, because I did start the show question list this afternoon. So I mean, at least we all have sense of humors.
We have a very, very distinct sense of humor here in the SFL. Hey, we got a couple of questions coming in here on the channel here in just a little bit, but if you don't want to ask your question in the server, or don't want to jump into the server, or just want to ask us live, you can go ahead and type in the YouTube chat. We'd love to answer your question. We've got plenty of time tonight. We can go talk on and on about the quarterfinal matchups. If you want to talk to us live, you can always jump into the green room in the NETMA server, into the studio section of the voice channel. And if you want to be on live on the air, you can go ahead, jump in there. We'll move you up here into the studio, and we'll talk live here on air. But the always prolific Andy Hamilton says, which SFLM player will be the first pick in the draft this upcoming season, and which player will make the biggest impact in season 18? I think it's way too early to call. At this point, unless a trade happens, which doesn't normally take place, there are very rare trades in the draft. I think it's going to be, I think it's going to take an arm and a leg to get a trade from Tulsa. Again, there's been some disconcerting comments come out of that organization from numerous players. We've talked about it on a couple episodes prior to this one about the locker room status and players that may or may not be leaving the club at any point, players that are thinking about leaving the club. But it all depends on what Tulsa's locker room looks like when we go into the offseason. Who will leave that locker room and go into free agency? That's the question now. As far as the first overall pick goes, way too early prediction from me is let me take a look at Portland's roster real quick. Not Portland, Tulsa. What am I saying? Portland had a 6-6 season. They're not picking first overall. I think they're probably going to have to make. I think now this is just speculation, looking at their roster and looking at, what may or may not happen. Tulsa may end up grabbing Collin Hart, depending on what happens with Sonzo Robinson. Again, long shot. Don't know if it'll happen or not. Again, it's going to be tough. Everyone's on a one-season contract. I mean, Andy said it himself. Which teams wouldn't like to have Collin Hart on their ball club? It's really tough. A couple of rookies that may end up moving. I don't think Philadelphia Collins is moving on from Tulsa. I think Daniel Wright has done okay over in Tulsa. He probably won't be moving on. I don't know. Has anyone heard from Miles Gibson? That's pretty. I don't know. Andy Hamilton since Douglas Brown, again, one of the hosts over there with SimPod, another one of our fantastic podcasts here on the SFL. Again, he has to go off the board this draft. Douglas Brown has to go off the board easily. I don't know when he'll go off. It all depends if Sonzo Robinson, decides he takes his talent somewhere else or whatnot. But again, it's really tough. I don't know what's going on in Tulsa for the most part. I know what people are telling me what's going on in Tulsa, but I don't have anything concrete enough to share with anybody. But Andy Hamilton insane, book it over there on Tulsa to go ahead and pick Douglas Brown. If you got any further questions, go ahead, let us know here in the NETMA server or here in chat. We'll get to them as we close out the show tonight. But let's go ahead and get to the playoffs once again. Let's go ahead and get to the quarterfinal pick'ems. And we're not going to go over SFLM pick'ems. I think we'll go over SFLM pick'ems real quick. I don't have an official schedule to put up here on screen, but I do have the matchups. They've been scrolling up there at the bottom of the screen, courtesy of the ticker, of course. But let's go ahead and see and get that go through those matchups again for you. What schedule, not stats. All of this information I'm finding is from the SFL website at simulationfl.net, link to which is also down there in the description. Go ahead and check out that website for all your SFL stats, highlights, and other information. All right, week 3. Why did it do that? There we go. There's the SFL schedule. Let's see. So first matchup, Boise, Annapolis. Annapolis on their bye week this past Thursday. Very solid performance from Randy Squarebush. He's going to be tough to take down. Boise had a little bit of trouble with Madison. I think Randy Squarebush has another fantastic game in Annapolis takes win number 2 of the season. Kendra, again, really early doors here in the minor league, but Annapolis and Boise.
I'm going to go Annapolis.
All right, let us know your predictions there in YouTube chat as well. Lexington and Tacoma. Tacoma, the early season favorites. I've been playing like early season favorites, and I think they'll continue that run. A couple people are saying they're going undefeated. I don't know about that one, but Tacoma probably taking down Lexington, in my opinion.
I agree on that one.
Madison and Memphis. The two M's matchup. Madison had a good opening day performance in week 2 against Boise. Memphis got their first win of the season against San Jose. Another tough defense, San Jose. Toss up this one, but I'm going Memphis.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go Madison because that was Nate's old team.
There you go. Got to play the homer at some point, right? All right. Ottawa and San Jose. Ottawa with a fantastic comeback, tying the league best for the biggest comeback in league history with a 24-point comeback. Down at 1 point, 24-0, comes back and wins it within the last minute, going 27-24 to finish off that game. San Jose, their defense is good. The offense, turned the corner just a little bit. Wasn't enough to take down the River Runners. Another tight matchup. Ottawa, a little shaky. Did need a little bit of heroics to come back in this ball game, but I'm going to give San Jose their first win here in week 3.
I agree on that one.
All right, that's your pick'ems for week 3 in the SFLM. Now we move on to the quarterfinals and a lot of crucial matchups. Of course, every game is crucial here in the playoffs, but a couple of games that are probably more anticipated than most, especially when you talk about Las Vegas and Baltimore. Number 1 going up against the upstart Las Vegas Fury. Stingy team versus team that took a knock going into the playoffs. Does that hurt their confidence? Baltimore, in my opinion, I think is the better team, and I think Baltimore comes out with the victory. I made a prediction way back on Tuesday on Access Live. I think it might be maybe close to a 13, 14-point victory. With a little bit of game planning, I think Las Vegas will make it closer, but I still think Baltimore will come out with a victory. Kendra, let us know what you got.
So I think I'm going to take Las Vegas. You've always got to root for the ones that on paper really, like where we see on the schedule, really might not make it because they are ranked 11. But I think I'm going to give them a chance. I believe in them.
Okay, so you go with Las Vegas?
I am going with Las Vegas.
All right, so we're split here on NETMA. Let us know in the comments who you got for the 1 versus 11 matchup. It's a tight game, to be sure, between both clubs. We'll find out on Sunday. Moving on to a couple Saturday games. Vancouver, Mexico City, 5-4. On paper, not a whole lot to split up the two teams. It's just probably who has the better game plan going into Mexico City here on Saturday. That being the second game. That's going to be on the SFL family of networks. Vancouver, I didn't pick Vancouver on Access Live. I still am going to pick Mexico City this time around because I like how Matt Wilson has played this season. He has kept his mistakes to a minimum. Meanwhile, Tom Pepper has had a couple of more picks than Matt Wilson. The defense is, in my opinion, a little bit leaky. It has to be said. They do give up plenty of yards. However, their offense is electrifying. Expect a tight ball game in Mexico City. I'm still going to give Mexico City the victory.
Hey, Tyler. I thought I loved you, Tyler. Anyway, so to listen to who you want to listen to now for the rest of the show, I'm going to go Vancouver. I feel like we can pull this off and prove you wrong, Tyler. I'm quite disappointed, but I mean, you have your opinion and you can't always pick me, I guess. But I feel like Vancouver's going to pull this off.
All right, we'll see what happens in Mexico City at 4:00 p.m. Eastern over on the SFL family and networks. And now, as Mr. What Up, Doe, Mr. Arizona Everything, Eddie Gage jumps in and says, "What up, Doe?" Everybody say it at home, "What up, Doe?" To Mr. Eddie Gage. He jumps in at the nick of time to hear us talk about his team, the Scorpions, and they take on Kendra's old team, the Atlanta Swarm. really, really solid defensive performance. We've talked about that throughout the entirety of the show. Atlanta, can they put a dent into the Arizona Scorpion defense? I think it's going to be tough. I picked Atlanta on Dave's show on Tuesday. I am going against my prediction on Access Live. I am going with the Scorpions to pull off the on paper upset victory, but I think it's going to be tight. Probably a 2 to 3 point margin when all things are said and done.
Yeah, I agree on portions of that. I believe it's going to be a tight game, but however, I think Atlanta is going to pull this off. I mean, they have hit strong to be where they are today. So love you, Eddie, and I love Ashley, but I have to go with Atlanta.
So both me and Kendra have not picked a single team to at the same time here in the quarterfinals. Will we pick the same team versus Charleston in Florida? 2 versus 8. Charleston, another hot team coming into these playoffs. Showed it last week, and now they face Florida. Consistency is Florida. I think the consistent play of the Storm will take home the victory. Kendra, your thoughts on Charleston and Florida, and who you got?
I'm going to go with Florida. I think they've held strong up until now, and I think they will continue to hold strong. And honestly, I feel like they're going to be the team to watch out for until the end of the playoffs.
All right, so that's our pick'ems. Let us know your picks here or in the NETMA server Discord, but that's going to do it for us tonight. Quarterfinals this weekend. Minor League Season 3 sometime next week, and official times and dates will be determined as the week goes on. But Kendra, thanks for joining us tonight, and thank you all of you for watching and listening wherever you might have been, either at home or somewhere over down the line. But thanks for joining us. We'll see you next Friday, and until then, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, ladies.